Okay guys, we are starting our grid unit today, and gridding is basically drawing an image by letting it be broken down by boxes. This technique has actually been around for a very long time. I believe the ancient Egyptians actually came up with this technique. If you'd ever noticed how precise and exact all their carvings of people and stuff look, so they had a system like this, or similar to this, at least, to where they would just break down the images and get them to transfer the same proportionally, or enlarge it or reduce it. You can use it. You can use this. In this example, we're going to be making our drawing bigger proportionally. You can do it to make it smaller or to transfer it the same size. We will be using this grid for a long time. If you are going to continue in art throughout high school, you will be using this technique multiple times throughout your classes, so make sure you learn how to do this. Even if you don't continue art, this is still a good technique to learn. It could come up again in some other way, shape, or form in your future. So anyways, for those of you at home, if I'm going to upload this, and if you could have access to a printer, you can print off this worksheet. If you do not have access to a printer, then you will need to draw your own grid here. And I'm going to do a separate video for you guys to know how to do that. I'm not going to include that in this video, so that way those that have access to the worksheet can just go ahead and follow along with this. So, again, if you are watching this at home, you might go ahead and pause this, come back to this video, watch the video where I am actually drawing the grid so that you can follow along with this video, okay? So, all right, first thing you need to do, especially if you are doing the worksheet, make sure you put your name at the top. Okay. So something else you need to know about grids is you probably need to put like a little check system in before you start drawing, because it's really easy to accidentally draw the wrong stuff in the wrong box, and then all of the rest of your image is off. So you might wind up getting like a scrunched up area, or one area that's really too big. So the way you need to do that is put in a little check system. Now I just kind of I'll number and letter the columns here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You need to do that as well. A, B, C, D, E, F. I like this system, but you could also, if you feel like that is not labeled enough, you could label each individual box. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, so on and so forth. However, you have to do it on both grids, or it does not work, okay? So this one is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, A, B, C, D, E, and F, okay? So, and if you wanted to do your numbers here and your letters here, that's fine. Just make sure it's the same on both. And again, you need to do it on both. Don't just say, I got this. Even if you're really good at drawing and this isn't your first rodeo at doing grids, still do it. I've been teaching, this is my 12th year teaching. I've been doing art for a lot longer than that. I still get messed up if I don't have a check system. So I strongly urge you to do that. For those of you that are turning this in, that's going to be what I'm looking for. So make sure all of you are turning it in. I'm going to be checking for that, so make sure you do that. All right, so this is pretty easy. We have a square 1A here. Down here in 1A, we have nothing in 1A, so we don't have to do anything in 1A here. So sometimes, especially when you have more complicated pictures, it might be easier to kind of go and X out a box once you get that done. Or maybe you want to fill it in. Sometimes that helps people kind of let it be a little less confusing. So here in 2A, I'll kind of zoom in a little bit more here so you can kind of see it better. So in 2A, we have a bunch of negative space here. So negative space is the space that is around the object. That was one of our vocab terms in our Elements of Art unit. We didn't talk about it much, but that was one of our terms there. So this is negative space. Our gorilla itself is positive space. So we have a bunch of negative space in square 2A, and a little bit of positive space. So we want to make sure that when we draw it down here, we fill up this square the same way it's filled here. We don't want to make our positive space way bigger, because then it's going to make our proportions wrong anyways. So we're trying to draw it box per box. So we have just this tiny little kind of line, and I would still sketch, still do it lightly, because we could still make mistakes and we need to erase those. So don't draw too heavy. So I've got my little line there, and I've got a little line right there for the top of his eye. Okay, so now I am done with square 2A. I can fill that in. Okay, so in square 3A, we can see that line kind of continues and kind of slopes down, makes a couple little bumps, and goes back up. So we are going to continue by doing that. I'm going back up. Sometimes I will also, when I get into an area that maybe might be more confusing, especially in a more complicated, I actually think I did that too much. I'm going to redo that. I think it needs to come out a little bit wider. When I get into an area that's more complicated, or I might wind up even breaking down each box into fours. So you can do that. So maybe this is a more complicated image, and you like there's a bunch going on in this square. You could divide that into 4 sections, and then divide this into 4 more sections, and that's going to help you maybe, you know, get it a little bit more accurate if you need to. So that is also a technique you can use if you find yourself struggling. So I also have this little line here in the corner, like so. Okay, so I am now done with 3A. Okay. Now, a lot of people, I have a bunch of kids that still, even breaking it down 1 square at a time, or even dividing a square up into 4 sections, still just all the extra lines on the paper with the grid lines, just make it a tiny bit more confusing. So what we can do, if you find yourself, you know, you might try a few squares out first just by eyeballing it. Like that one's pretty easy. The next grid that you do, so that's 4A. That's all I've got in 4A. Scribble that out. Got just this tiny little bit, just kind of here in this lower corner. Okay. What a lot of people do, and again, I've done this myself, depending on how complicated the image is I'm doing, is you can make yourself a grid finder, or a grid finder. You can make one for, not a viewfinder, gosh. You can make a little piece of paper with a cutout this size, and then that will help you kind of just see the image better. So the way I do that, which would be better if this wasn't pink paper, but I will lay a little piece of paper over. I'm just using a sticky note for now. I like using those. You don't have to use those. But it's kind of nice because it keeps the viewfinder in place. But I usually can see through that enough to be able to trace just a little square. And I would make one of these probably just to know how to make one of these. And you kind of fold the paper a little bit, just to snip out a tiny bit in that middle, so you have a way to get your scissor in there. Let me just cut that out. These come in really, really handy, and honestly, I'd probably just go ahead and learn how to make one, because most of y'all will probably need to use it at some point. But you can just use scrap paper. Like, it does not have to be a sticky note. Those are just kind of handy to have. So anyways, you lay that around the 1 square you're trying to get, and it just kind of blocks everything out around it. Makes it a lot easier to see just that square. And then you can kind of come down there and draw on it. So like right now, say if I want to continue where I'm going, I don't have anything in 6A. And you don't have to go in order like this. I like to kind of start a line, and then I'll kind of continue that line wherever it's going. So that's what I'm going to do here. But say square 5B is just too complicated, and I need a little bit help. So I'm going to come down here. I'm going to lay that viewfinder right on top of that square 5B. I'm going to make sure I'm in 5B as well. And make sure you're checking occasionally that you're in the correct square when you're drawing. Because you can get into the flow of it and then not realize you accidentally flowed into the wrong square. So just, you don't have to check every time, but you need to check often. Okay, so I've got this line that kind of comes down. I've got, doesn't go all the way through the corner, but it kind of comes maybe right about to there. Okay, and then I've got this other little kind of curve right there. So that will help me draw as well. That's another technique to use. So that is the main idea of doing grids. So your job is to finish out this gorilla grid, okay? We'll go ahead and answer some questions because I always get some kids that ask me about this little zigzag here. I am not worried about you getting every single little zigzag. What I am worried about is where it starts, where it curves, how low it curves, and where it ends, okay? Just make it zigzaggy as you go. So what I would do is just kind of like how I did the straight line here, just do it a really light line. You could kind of put your guide mark in, and then go back and do your zigzags and then erase your guide mark. But I do want the zigzags still, but this is where I'm more focused on, did you let your zigzags flow in the squares where they were supposed to? Okay. A couple other issues is I usually always have kids that don't pay attention. There's lines that run into the grid lines too. So like this line here, this is a big curve here. It touches this line here, but it should kind of continue. And then I'll also pay attention to like on the lip. I always have the kids on the lip and nose. They either, this should not be touching, okay? Like there's a gap between the bottom lip and this square. But this almost is touching. There's not a bunch of space. So just, again, watch where everything falls within your square. I'm not going to continue this because I want you to kind of continue it on your own. Once you get done with the gorilla, which it shouldn't take you too long, you also have a second one. This one you should get done this hour for sure, and then you should be able to get most of this one done. But I will probably carry like work day of this tomorrow too. But once you're done with this one, if you get done today, you need to make sure your name's on it. Then come get this one. You need to show me, if you're in class, you need to show me this. And then I will give you one of these. And then when you're done, you're going to staple them together and put them in the basket. If you're at home, you will also, whenever you get done with your gorilla, you're going to turn these in at the same time. So they're probably both not going to be due till tomorrow. It usually, to get both done, it takes about 2 days with my lesson. So you'll get this one done, you'll draw your grid, you'll draw your gorilla, and then you'll have to draw another grid, draw your lion. Both, I am looking for the number system to check yourself on both of them, okay? And just that you have it as accurately as possible. So on the lion, a few issues that students have with this one is there's also some lines here that run into the grid lines too, and they don't think they're there. So just watch them. I always pay attention to where my lines meet. Like when I draw my chin, I'm always like, okay, my chin should touch that line there. It's all about the spacing really in this eye. So just pay attention. It's not hard. Those of you that don't have patience, you might struggle with it just a little bit more because you just want to get it done. But you need to try to do it correctly because we will, of course, be doing a project with this. And this year, since we did not get we usually do gridding in December or November, but with everything stretched out weird this year, we're going to merge this lesson with our face lesson, and you're going to be doing your own face with a grid. So I think you're going to want to learn how to do this well so that you can draw your face well. So, all right, those of you that are, again, at home, I will have a separate video on showing you how to start your grid.